Okay, so this continues to be a very sensitive topic. Tensions are obviously rising in the Middle East between Israel and Iran, and very clearly Israel is publicly calling on the United States to join their war effort to take a more direct approach and role in confronting Iran. Israel's Prime Minister, Bibi Netanyahu, I gotta say, is making some pretty bold and unprecedented claims. He's taking to the media, clearly trying to make an argument to convince Donald Trump and the American people to join their war effort. And so now we're faced with two questions. The first is, what is true? And the second question is, what's the play? How should the United States respond? Some people seem to suggest that Donald Trump is now a warmonger. He's a war hawk, no different than Lindsey Graham, and he's behind the whole thing. Meanwhile, other people seem to be suggesting that Donald Trump is abandoning our closest ally of Israel. But I don't think it's so black and white. I think there's a whole lot of nuance. It's a very complicated situation, obviously. And so rather than sit here and make a big, bold claim, taking a stance that I might potentially regret in the future, I'd rather do just more of a general analysis, fill you guys in on what's going on, and explain the different viewpoints and sentiments. Let's unpack it all, shall we? We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so let's start off with the Israeli position. Israeli Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu is clearly banging the war drums. He just took to Fox News and made some pretty bold claims.
We decided to act because we saw enough uranium, enriched uranium, for 9 bombs. And all they had to do was weaponize them. We stopped that by we're attacking their nuclear sites. We attacked their chief nuclear scientists it's like Hitler's nuclear scientists. Would you leave them? Of course not. They're a terrorist regime. We can't have Iran have nuclear weapons. And by the way, our intel shows that they intend to give these nuclear weapons to their Houthi proxies and others. And that's nuclear terrorism on a global scale. It threatens everyone. And the last thing is they have plans to develop intercontinental ballistic missiles. Right now, 8,000 kilometers, very soon, just out a little distance, and they can reach the eastern seaboard of the United States. These people who chant death to America, try to assassinate President Trump twice, killed 241 of your Marines in Beirut, killed and injured thousands of American soldiers in Afghanistan and Iraq, try to bomb a restaurant in Washington, D.C., chant death to America, burn the American flag. Do you want these people to have nuclear weapons and the means to deliver them to your cities? Of course not. Yeah. So we're defending ourselves, but we're also defending the world.
He's warning us that Iran isn't just a threat to Israel, but rather a global danger. According to him, the Iranian regime is plotting to hand off nuclear weapons to their proxies and create, I guess, nuclear Armageddon or chaos worldwide. But I think most stunningly, he claims that the Iranian regime was directly linked or behind the 2 assassination attempts on Donald Trump. And that right there obviously is a massive claim that, if actually proven true, I think would change a lot of opinions. But the issue with that claim is that there's no actual concrete evidence. Bibi Netanyahu claims that he knows this based on intelligence.
You just said Iran tried to assassinate President Trump twice. Do you have intel that the assassination attempts on President Trump were directly from Iran?
Through proxies, yes. Through their intel, yes. Look, he's enemy number one. He's a decisive leader. He never took the path that others took to try to bargain with him in a way that is weak, giving them basically a pathway to enrich uranium, which means a pathway to the bomb, padding it with billions and billions of dollars. He took up this fake agreement and basically tore it up. He Qasem Soleimani, he said, made it very clear, including now, you cannot have a nuclear weapon. He's been very forceful. So for them, he's enemy number one. President Trump is a great threat to Iran's plans to weaponize nuclear weapons and use them.
Again, the gravity of the claim itself cannot be ignored, but I think neither can the lack of public proof. And right away, I'm getting flashbacks. We've been here before. I think most people still remember the whole weapons of mass destruction claim, the lie from 2003 that led us into invading Iraq. That war reshaped U.S. foreign policy for a generation and cost the American taxpayers trillions. So here we are again, faced with another one of these situations. And so I'd say naturally, there's a healthy dose of skepticism this time round. And I don't blame the skeptics. And so it's obvious Israel's trying to sell the mission, let's call it. And this, of course, puts President Trump in a little bit of an interesting spot, but honestly more difficult than interesting. The president right now is in a position where no matter the decision that he makes, it's going to be met with intense scrutiny and criticism. Right now, all over social media, I'm sure you see it, there's a caricature being painted of the president that he's simply following Israel's lead. Whatever Bibi Netanyahu says, that's what Trump does, but I'm not entirely sure that that holds up here. According to new reports, we're now learning that the president supposedly personally blocked an Israeli operation to assassinate Iran's supreme leader.
A U.S. official is telling us just in the last few minutes since your interview concluded that President Trump did, in fact, in the last couple of days, nix a plan that the Israelis were putting together to assassinate the supreme leader of Iran. So we can put a bow on that as President Trump prepares to come and join us here in Canada. And he is telegraphing the way that he will frame this fight between Israel and Iran once he meets with the other G7 leaders. Part of a long Truth Social, he says, we will have peace soon between Israel and Iran. Many calls and meetings now taking place. I do a lot, never get credit for anything, but that's okay. The people understand, make the Middle East great again.
And so we're kind of in this situation where you kind of just have to choose to believe what you believe. Because initially the report was that Donald Trump had greenlit the Israeli operation. That's what the Israelis were saying, but then there was some pushback from the White House. Even Donald Trump pushed back on that. What we do know for sure is that the president was aware of the operation, and that's not entirely surprising if Israel is going to do something like this. The president of the United States is going to know. But then, of course, if we're being absolutely fair in our analysis, logically, it makes sense that if Donald Trump had the authority to veto the Israeli operation to assassinate Ayatollah Khamenei, the leader of Iran, then I guess you could say it stands to reason that he didn't veto the other attack, and so he was in support of it. And I think that's a pretty fair assessment. I mean, Donald Trump's very clear. He doesn't want the Iranian regime to get their hands on a nuke. And so the next question is this whole thing, part of a 4D chess move where Trump is essentially using Israel as a proxy to weaken the Iranian regime and force them in a position where they have to negotiate? There's a lot of reports that seem to suggest that Donald Trump was engaging with the Iranian regime and the talks weren't going so well, and so he greenlit this operation in an effort to shock the living hell out of them, which now potentially puts Donald Trump in the driver's seat to get a beneficial deal done. And so, there's a lot of moving pieces here. It's a very sensitive topic. And I guess the question for most of MAGA is, has Donald Trump gone back on his promise of being a negotiator, a peacemaker? Well, I think that remains to be seen. Because even if Donald Trump greenlit this attack, if the end goal is peace through negotiations while using Israel basically as the muscle, as the proxy, is that considered warmongering? I think the main issue is that the American people don't want to get dragged in another forever war. The claim from Donald Trump's biggest critics right now is that that's exactly what he's doing, starting a war. But if you listen to the president, it doesn't really seem that that's the case.
And they said the attack is what?
That you waved off an Israeli plan to attack Iranian nuclear facilities.
I wouldn't say waved off. I'm not in a rush to do it because I think that Iran has a chance to have a great country and to live happily without death. And I'd like to see that. That's my first option. If there's a second option, I think it would be very bad for Iran. And I think Iran is wanting to talk. I hope they're wanting to talk. It's going to be very good for them if they do. And I'd like to see Iran thrive in the future, do fantastically well. I know the Iranian people, they're incredible people. Always have been very smart, very energetic, very successful people. And I don't want to do anything that's going to hurt anybody. I really don't. But Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. It's, pretty simple. It's really simple. We're not looking to take their industry. We're not looking to take their land. All we're saying is you can't have a nuclear weapon.
Donald Trump isn't doing his best Lindsey Graham impression. No, pretty clearly and pretty consistently, he's saying that he wants to broker peace in the region. That's not exactly what you do if you're racing for world war. And so for my very early preliminary understanding and analysis here, it seems as though the Trump strategy is becoming quite clear. He's not looking to get dragged into a war, but he's not necessarily looking to roll over either. And he's clearly very intent and very focused, steadfastly so, on ensuring that the Iranian regime never get their hands on a nuke. It's almost like the president's walking a tightrope, You got some people who claim that he's too close to Israel, he's doing Israel's bidding. Then you've got the other perspective that's a little bit more war hawkish, let's say. They're making the claim that Donald Trump isn't being aggressive enough. He should join Israel's offensive. And Trump's kind of just walking in the middle. Is it a milquetoast cowardly stance? Or is it restraint in the proper strategy? Again, I can't sit here and definitively say that it's one or the other because I really don't know, and really only time will be able to tell. That's the only way we're truly going to know. And anybody who says otherwise, anybody who makes these grand claims or claims to know, in my view, is either pushing an agenda or is lying. There's been no real call to war from the Trump side. And if anything, I think Trump is practicing discretion, restraint. He stated unequivocally that his interest is not to get involved in another war. If Iran had directly attacked the United States and its assets, obviously we'd be having a little bit of a different conversation here. And now that obviously creates the opportunity for false flag events, but we're not going to go there yet. The point is, there's a whole lot of nuance here. President Trump is clearly deliberating happening behind the scenes, there's a lot of people making all kinds of grandiose claims, but when you analyze what Donald Trump is actually saying, it doesn't seem to line up with either extreme. My view is that Donald Trump seems to be resisting the war drums. It seems he's prioritizing strategy over emotion, negotiation over escalation, while we all clearly understand that Iran is absolutely a bad actor. At the end of the day, the question is, what's right for America and what is right for the American people? And if we've learned anything over the last 20, 30 years, it's that you can't rush into these things emotionally. The most patriotic stance is to be cautious, to proceed with caution, and to explore every avenue of diplomacy while being very, very reluctant to declaring all-out war. Anyways, it's obviously a very difficult situation. It's hard to know exactly what's going on. It's hard to trust really any information. We have to wait for the facts to present themselves rather than getting caught up in the emotion and in the propaganda. In other words, we got to be cautious and let's see what happens. Anyways, that's what I got for you guys on this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.